We're going to go through some robotic process automation concepts. We give our audience an opportunity to ask questions, learn more about Automation Anywhere. This is for sure your content. So you tell us what you want to see. We want to hear from you. What are you curious about? What kind of content would you benefit from the most? This is designed to be interactive, right? So this is for the RPA community. We want to know what kind of stuff you guys want to go through. This week, we're going to start off by going through RPA 101. If you have a background in RPA, you might find this helpful. If you have no background in RPA, you'll for sure find this helpful. If you've been intimidated by this technology, I promise you we're going to walk through it. We're going to understand what is RPA. We're going to understand the RPA benefits, and we'll talk about how RPA and how Automation Anywhere specifically actually runs. Sound good? So the only thing I ask, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Let us know how we can change this. Let us know how this can be as effective as possible for you. So the concepts covered in this week's episode, we're going to go through what is RPA. We want to talk about what is this whole thing that we keep hearing about with robotics and process automation. What are the benefits of RPA and why would I actually use it? We're going to walk through the Micah Smith top 8 benefits of RPA. We'll talk through why each of those benefits is important and what that actually means. And then finally, we're going to talk about where these RPA bots actually work. There's a lot of confusion about what does it mean when robotics comes to my workplace? What does it mean when we start to have bots running everywhere? We want to talk about that and talk about some of the misconceptions that people might have. So first off, a little bit of background about me. I am Micah Smith. I'm a Developer Evangelist at Automation Anywhere. I am formerly a robotics COE lead at a financial services institution. What COE means is Center of Excellence. A lot of RPA initiatives will have a Center of Excellence where they have federated development model. We can talk about all of that in a future video. Just know that I have some experience in RPA. Finally, a little bit about me personally. I'm a huge RPA and document imaging aficionado, so I'm largely interested in doing all kinds of crazy RPA bots. I think the future and the possibilities for RPA are pretty much limitless. So I make all kinds of crazy bots. I made an Android bot recently. I made a Black Friday bot to check out on the Black Friday shopping process. I also made one to buy a car a couple years ago. So those videos are up. You can check those out. I'm also a huge lover and builder of arcade and vintage video games. If you ever want to geek out with me and take me totally off topic, we can talk about that. So let's start by talking about what is RPA. RPA stands for Robotic Process Automation. This is the Micah Smith dictionary definition. And I say that because this is not the official definition you'll find if you go look this up on Google or something else. This is the definition as I would say it, and we'll walk through why I wrote it out this way. So, robotic process automation is specialized software robots that automate high volume, repetitive, rule-based tasks in an audible and reliable way. Okay? So, this is the definition. You can steal this one, you can use this one, make note of this. As we go through and talk about some of the different benefits of RPA, think back to this definition because that's what this is, right? So let's break down this definition a little bit and talk about some of the key words and why I would write a definition this way. So back to our definition. I've got several words highlighted here in italics. Those are the key words that I wanted to make sure to include in the definition, and we'll talk about why. The first is specialized software robots. And I put this in here because, when I first heard about robotics coming to the financial services institution I was working at, someone explained it to me like, yeah, there's these robots and the way it works is there's like a camera behind the person who's doing all the data entry and there's another camera on their laptop, and then like between the two cameras it creates a robot, and then the robot will sit there and do all the work. That's not how this works. Right? These are software robots. So even the picture that we used here, these are software bots. They don't exist physically. You're not going to be able to see them sitting at a desk or something like that. The picture is in jest, but they're pieces of software, right? Think about it. They're pieces of software that are running a particular script to complete a particular application or a particular use case. The next point I want to make in this definition is automate. Right? And I know that sounds super obvious, but what are we really talking about in automate? And automate, I would say, is really the opposite of a manual task, right? Either I can do something manually myself or I can automate it. So when my boss asked me to, let's say, do my timesheet or something like that, that's a task that I might automate, because if I have to do it more than once, I'm going to be really bummed out. And so what I'll do is create an automation to handle that for me, so it's one less thing that I have to worry about. Right now, we don't actually do timesheets. That's just an example, but that would be something that's an automatable task. There's a lot of tasks that are automatable in areas like operations, front and back office operations, accounts payable, right? Invoices and things like that, processing those kind of transactions. Those are all automatable tasks, right? We can have bots play a role in that to help relieve some of what the humans are having to deal with. The next keyword I have in here is high volume. And I wouldn't say that this is mandatory, but this is where you're going to find kind of the sweet spot for a lot of RPA bots. What I mean by this is, if there's a task that we're doing every single day, and let's say 50 people are doing it, that's a really high volume, right? That's probably a good task we want to look at to see if we can automate, because automating that is going to give us a huge lift in our operational costs. It's also going to give us a huge lift by freeing up those 50 people to do higher value tasks, right? Those tasks that bots aren't necessarily good at. So high volume is, kind of in here with an asterisk, I would say. There are tasks that might be lower volume, but that we still want to automate by a bot. Let's say a particular transaction only happens once per year, and there's only a couple people who are actually really good at that process, and it's not particularly well documented, right? That would be a good place for RPA, because the bot can be trained once, you set it up, you test it, you know that it works. That bot can be relied on when it's tax time or it's end of year and you need to run that particular task. So high volume is not necessarily the only indicator of this being a great opportunity for RPA, but it's one that we find commonly in a lot of organizations. The next word in our definition is repetitive. And again, this is probably repetitive to the high volume word that we already used. But if it's a task that's happening over and over again, that's probably a good use case for RPA. And that's where we're going to find a lot of RPA or a lot of automations that have already taken place, where it's a task that we do every single day. We receive this mail. We have to go through and take this spreadsheet and translate all of that data into this web form. Those are good opportunities for RPA. Rule-based, right? When we think about these different bots, sorry, I didn't click it. Rule-based means that we're going to be going through and telling the bot exactly what to do, right? Step 1, you're going to do this. Step 2, you're going to do this. Step 3, you're going to do this, right? And we can still have some deviations there. We can have conditional statements where we might say, hey, if this condition is present, then go over here and do this. Otherwise, go do this thing, right? So we can still have that, but the bot isn't going to just make up what it wants to do, right? And so I specifically included this picture right here of a bot looking at a cat and getting caught by its boss, right? The bots aren't going to go off and just start watching cat videos on YouTube. They're going to do specifically what you tell them to do. And so I think that's another big misconception about robotics and RPA. It's very much rule-based. I'm telling it specifically what to do this, then do this. Audible is a huge one, right? When humans are doing particular tasks, we don't necessarily know what they were doing or why they made a particular decision. When a bot's doing a task, we can record that every single time. What application was it using? What data did it fill in? Why did it make that decision? What time did it log in? What time did it log off? We can record all of that. You can use it with Splunk. You could log that out to a text file. You can make use of that data, but you have a full recording of exactly what the bot was doing at any time, and you have the ability to use that. Finally, reliable. The bots can run 24/7. So there's no, hey, this department's closed at 5 p.m. The bots can be handling tasks on the weekends. They can be handling tasks late at night. If there's reports that your team needs to run, maybe you run them weekly and it always takes 3 hours to run, have the bot kick that off at 2 a.m. And that way, by the time anyone comes to the office, the task is done. You can review the bot's work, but it's reliable. We can have the bots do these tasks either through triggering of different files, through API calls, or through things like scheduling, right? We always need to run this at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. Let's look at the benefits of RPA and why I would use it. And we're going to talk about the top 8 here. I put these in my order of value of what I see, but someone else might tell you something different. So number 1 is improved productivity. We can get more done with the same staff. If we think about your business 2020 and 2021, right, likely hopefully if your business is growing, you're going to be doing, 1.5x or 1.3x of what you did in 2019 or 2018, right? That means either you have to staff up or you have to automate. And with Automation Anywhere, you do have the ability to automate particular tasks that might help you from having to staff up, right? And so that allows you to get more done with the existing staff without having to worry about finding the right person, finding a good fit for that team, doing all the training, making sure that they're actually being accountable for what they said they would. The bots allow you to get more out of the existing staff. Tasks done the same way every single time. This is a huge one for me. If I was asked to take data from an Excel spreadsheet and map it over to a web application, for example, I would probably start by, copying and pasting fields, and then I would get up to get a coffee, and then I would kind of forget about the way that I was doing it, and these fields are pretty short, it's a phone number, so maybe I'll just key that one in because I can probably get it right. But some of these other fields like the email address or the name, I'm going to copy those out and paste them. And in that way, I've kind of done things a different way. And that's going to be a process that's totally ripe for error. When a bot is doing it, the bot does it the same way every single time. And like we said, it's auditable, right? So I can know exactly what the bot's doing. There's no, person A does it this way, person B does it this way, and person C is inventing their own way of doing it. The bot does it the same way every single time. Faster turnaround times. So this leads to an improved customer experience. We don't have the situation where you send a wire transfer and it's the most money you've ever saved up in your whole life and you're getting ready to buy a house and you call the title company and you say, "Hey, did you guys get that wire I sent?" And they say, "Oh, sorry, that department's closed." Are you kidding? Right? So if a bot is able to take some of those automated tasks and allow that department to stay open, we have a better customer experience, right? There are particular things that we don't necessarily need a human there to complete. And so the bot can take over those kind of tasks. Now, don't get me wrong, there's still things that we might need a human to verify or a human to take care of. So not every single operation for a particular department would be a 24/7 operation. But I would encourage a lot of organizations to think about where can we automate some of these tasks so that if there are, in our workflow, 5 or 6 other steps that are dependent on this one, how do we, remove the bottleneck here and allow that task to continue? Improved employee morale. This one is surprising to a lot of people, but employees focusing on human tasks and not robotic tasks actually improves employee morale, right? There was a study at the University of London that found that over 60% of employees are interested in this opportunity to upskill and side skill, and they welcome automation and they welcome this new use of technology in the workplace. And so I would encourage you to take an inclusive over intrusive approach as you start your RPA journey. What does that mean? That means opening it up, doing federated development, teaching people who haven't done any kind of development before to use RPA. This is a very user-friendly drag and drop application. It's not syntactical coding. You're not going to have these weird compilation errors. The idea is that you can train someone who understands basic workflows to be able to create their own bots, right? And so I very much encourage people that as they're starting this RPA journey, as they're getting into RPA, include everyone from your organization. Let them get trained. There's awesome resources on Automation Anywhere University. Let them use it, right? It's free. The training's free. It's pretty fun. I would encourage you to include everyone in your organization as you start your RPA journey. Auditing capabilities. We won't talk a ton about this one, but this is, like we said, kind of related to that speed and accuracy of doing the same tasks the same way every single time. I can fully record that. I can know if the bot has messed up. Again, the bot's not going to go off and do its own thing, just creatively. It's going to follow the rules that I establish, and I can outline that, and then I can have the bot log those every single time it makes a decision. Low barrier to entry. And again, this is kind of tied to the employee morale that we talked about, but this is a low-code bot building platform, right? So you don't have to have a ton of background to be able to build these bots. You just have to understand how the process works, how the business process works, how to use the tool. Again, I would strongly encourage people to take a look at Automation Anywhere University. Get your organization all around this. Get people from operations involved. Get people from finance involved. Show them how to build bots. You'll be amazed with their creativity. Scalability and flexibility. You can, especially with A2019, quickly scale up to accommodate those unexpected volumes. So if I've got work that happens seasonally, right, end of year, tax time, things like that, I can quickly scale up my number of bot runners so that I can, handle those larger unexpected volumes of work. The flip side of that is I try to hire a bunch of people, or I steal a bunch of people from other departments, teach them how to do this one thing, and then try to get them up to speed really quickly and hope for the best. The flip side is I build bots that are reliable, that do the same thing every single time. I can quickly replicate those. I can scale those up with more bot runners. The number one benefit of RPA, again, this is going back to the Micah Smith definition, is compatibility with existing systems. Okay, so we can use old apps, we can use new apps, there's no problem. And we're going to expand on this one just a second. So when we talk about the benefits of RPA and why I would use it, right? Compatibility with existing system. RPA bots are typically developed on top of an application's graphical user interface, or GUI. And that's what we see here in the upper right? This is just, I don't know what application this is. I found this online, but it's a generic application. We've seen these kind of interfaces before. We go, we fill in some data, we select for some drop downs, we hit submit, and it validates our entry or stuff like that. That application likely doesn't have an API, which means that traditional software development is kind of limited in how it can interact with that application. Traditional software development, on the other hand, typically relies on an application's programming interface, or an API, right? And that's basically a service that's running that allows us to interact with that application. Now, some applications will have both. They'll have a GUI and an API. Other applications will only have one or the other. The key here is that Automation Anywhere allows you to develop against either. So there might be certain applications where, it's this old legacy app we've been using for a while. I'm going to go ahead and interact with it with the recorder. I'm going to have to fill in the screen. I'll have to hit submit, and then I'll extract some data out of it. But I might take that data and move it over to a more modern application that has an API where I can make that API call and dump all that data or update those values, right? So the real benefit, in my opinion, the biggest benefit is the compatibility with legacy and modern systems, right? And I think that's where people are going to find the most value for RPA. So why would I use it? Let's do a quick manual breathing exercise. If you think about breathing, right? Breathe in, breathe out. If you think about that manual breathing, right? Breathing is a critical task for our survival. Now, luckily for us, it's pretty much automated. So when I'm thinking about breathing, that's pretty much all I can think about, right? If my body is automating it for me, then I'm not really worried about it. And I can focus on things like, creating RPA bots, working out, being emotionally intelligent, spending time with my family. I can do all these other things because my breath is automated. What kind of tasks does your organization have where all you can think about is the breathing? What are those operational tasks that are keeping some groups from being able to do what they'd like to do instead of just doing what they have to do, right? And so if we can automate some of those tasks and give them, lack of a better word, breathing room in their group, they can do those more advanced tasks that might mean, spending more time with engaging with our customer experience, focusing on the organization's strategic pursuits, instead of just these day-to-day, keep the lights on kind of tasks. The last thing I want to talk about is where these bots actually work. Now, with Automation Anywhere A2019 Enterprise, we have a control room. That control room is either in the cloud, which is going to be a very common scenario, or it's going to be locally installed on a server, right? So we have that option. We use what's called a bot creator, which is a web-based tool for allowing us to create those bots. So there's not a heavy installation. You just go to this website from any application, from any computer, and then you can start developing those bots. Those bots would technically be uploaded and live on our control room. From the control room, we can engage to send those bots to our different bot runners. Now, a bot runner is where the RPA code is actually going to execute. So when we think back of that example with a room full of robots sitting and typing, what's really happening is we have these virtual desktops or virtual machines that are living either on the cloud or on a server, where they're automating all of these tasks, and maybe at the end of their task they send an email. They definitely let the control room know that the task is complete, but maybe they send an email, they drop a file someplace, they make an API call. The bot will execute on that bot runner, which again could be in the cloud, could be on a server someplace where we have these VDIs or virtual desktops hosted. The flip side is that we do have support for a bot runner. So we can do attended automation at an actual desktop. And that's where a bot is working more as a virtual assistant. And you could engage with the bot. You could have the bot do a few steps of a process, then you do a few steps, then you engage with the bot in a different way. And so that is an option. Now, one of the big things we talked about here is that we have the ability to scale up very quickly. And especially when we're thinking about bot runners in the cloud, we can quickly replicate those machines, replicate out our bots. And when it comes to tax time, or when it comes to end of year or our seasonal work, we can quickly scale up and accommodate those workloads because this stuff is running virtually. We don't have to go out and buy a new desktop. We don't have to go out and buy another laptop. We just clone the machines, let them continue to work. So, brief recap. What is RPA? Go back to our definition: specialized software robots that automate high volume, repetitive, rule-based tasks in an audible and reliable way. What are the benefits in RPA and why would I use it? Speed, accuracy, consistency, and flexibility in automating tasks. Where do these RPA bots actually work? When they're unattended, they would usually run on a virtual machine that's running on the cloud or running on an on-prem server. When it's attended, they could run on the desktop with human intervention to automate part of those tasks. Last thing. Feedback makes these sessions better. We just started Whiteboard Wednesdays. We want these to be successful. We want these to be as helpful as possible for you. So make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Let us know how we can make this content as effective as possible for you. Go be great. Go make awesome bots.